Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday. It is time to disrupt your week. My name is Paul Blanchard, president of Habit Finder. Excited to be with you today right here in my office here at Habit Finder's offices to talk about principles and practices and processes that will disrupt your patterns of thinking. Everything that we do here at Habit Finder is based on how you think. We understand that there are three primary dimensions for development. There are three primary dimensions for becoming a better person and for being able to grow. And most people focus on behavior, which is really simple. It has the best return. If I'm doing something that doesn't help and I stop doing it, then I get an immediate return. The challenge is, how long can we sustain that? So a lot of people are investing in and working on their behavior. They're working on what they're doing, what they're not doing, the strategies for doing things differently, and being able to continually do things better. But then we move out of the behavioral index and we get into the emotional preferences, which for most people would be referred to as personality. That's really what your personality is. Your personality is your emotional preference. It's the memorized emotions, okay, that we have, that as Dr. Joe Dispenza would say it. It's our current palette, our current preferences on an emotional level. But what we do here at Habit Finder is we move into the source. We move into what it all comes down to become a better person, to be more successful. And that is the way your brain works. It's not necessarily the context or the content of your brain as much as the patterns, the machinery, the neural pathways that are processing your life. And here at Habit Finder, we have technology that measures how your life is processed internally and externally by your own brain. And there are three dimensions for each based on the three axiological mathematical areas of your life. Now, you don't need to worry about any of those things as much as you are going to want to understand what is happening under the surface that's creating challenges. So that's the whole premise of this show here. Whether you're watching right now on Facebook Live on our Habit Finder Facebook page, facebook.com/Habit Finder, or you're listening in on Clubhouse right now, which is a new feature we've added, which has been awesome and really fun. We get an opportunity to do this live show every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Usually goes about 20 to 25 minutes. And then we close down the Facebook Live and stay on Clubhouse to answer questions, to have people come on stage and ask questions and interact with me for some live coaching and interaction. So love this dual format. So if you see me looking down, I'm just checking the Clubhouse room to let people know what's going on as they hop in or listening to the audio. And those of you that are watching here live on Facebook from Fort Worth, good to see you, Charlie. Awesome. And others, we're excited to be with you today because today we're talking about something that actually came from some of the time that I've spent in Clubhouse over the last few weeks. A lot of people in a lot of rooms that I've been in have been asking the moderators and asking the hosts about burnout. They've been asking about all the burnout that was experienced in 2020 and the concern that they might have just fumes left in the tank, hoping for something to revitalize them in 2021. So as we dive in here today, we want to talk about burnout because I heard it so many times. I wanted to make sure that the next Disrupt Your Week episode was focused on burnout because it's something that we will all experience. I wish I could tell you that what we're going to talk about today is going to help you prevent all burnout. It's not possible. And in fact, I don't think that you want to do that because that's a boundary that you're going to want to test and oftentimes don't know how close you've gotten to it until you've crossed over it. Now, I don't recommend running way beyond that because you're going to create unnecessary collateral damage, but you certainly want to know where your limits are. If you go into the gym, you want to be able to work out to failure, to burnout, but not every time. Research has shown that the more often you do that, the diminishing impact it is on your longevity. And that's really what avoiding burnout is all about, is reducing or increasing longevity, to be able to reduce those times that our body just finally breaks us down and makes us stop. But in terms of disruption, I want to address burnout, I want to address one in particular because it's the most common reaction that I hear from people talking about how to prevent burnout, and that is rest. So many people responded on Clubhouse and in so many rooms that, well, you've got to rest. You've got to take advantage of giving yourself time to rest and to relax and whatever it might be. Okay. So getting the opportunity to do this. Everything good? Oh, okay, cool. My team is pinging people to jump into the Clubhouse room because they're way smarter than me. Okay. And those of you just joining us, we're simultaneously broadcasting on Clubhouse right now. Hopefully they can, it's in my ear. That's why they can still hear me. They are much smarter than me. But we're also live here on Facebook on the Habit Finder Facebook page for every Wednesday here at 10 a.m. Mountain Time for Disrupt Your Week. And today we're talking about burnout, but specifically the fact that the most common advice I hear people give to prevent burnout is to rest. And that does not prevent burnout. Okay, so let's dive right into this. Let's talk about what rest actually does, because rest is super important. Okay, I am not here to say that rest is a bad thing. Please do not misinterpret the message. Rest is essential. It is important. It allows us to be able to rejuvenate things physically. Okay, but here's the challenge. Burnout doesn't come as much from the activity that you're doing. In fact, over 90% of burnout is not attributed to what you're actually doing. Over 90% of burnout is attributed to what you're thinking about what you're doing. So that's what we want to address today, because rest quiets the mind. Actually, it doesn't quiet the mind. It shuts the mind off. We go unconscious. And what I would want you to consider and point out to you today in terms of the dynamics here is, let's say you've got a vehicle, that you are a car, and we don't want to burn out the engine. So what do we do to make sure we don't burn out the engine? Well, we make sure we take care of it, get regular maintenance, change the oil, change the belts, put in good fuel, and all the things, right? What we don't do to prevent the engine from blowing up is we don't just turn it off every once in a while. We don't just stop driving for the day and turn it off and think, oh, that's going to take care of the engine. No, that helps, because if you just run it endlessly, you're going to rack up so many miles, and that's certainly going to play a factor, but that has way less to do with burning out an engine, because there are engines out there that have gone hundreds of thousands of miles. And then there's engines that didn't even make it a few thousand miles because the car wasn't cared for in terms of its proper order of running and how its engine actually works. So if you think, oh, I'm feeling like I'm going to burn out, I just need to take a break. And you may need to. That may be a great opportunity for you to consider. But what you don't want to do is think that now that I'm done with my break, everything's better and I can just get back to turning the car back on, hit the gas, and go. Because what you did is delayed burnout. Sometimes it was important to do that to collect your mind, collect your thoughts, maybe rejuvenate some of the physical energy that's been depleted by going and going and going and going. But what you didn't do is you didn't address the engine. You just turned it off. Again, I want everyone to really grab onto this. Just because I turn off the engine of my car, if I haven't been taking care of the engine, that just means I've delayed however long I have the engine turned off, overnight, for the weekend, for a few days. I've just delayed, okay, the impact and the potential for that engine to burn out. So let's talk about how you actually prevent burnout. And again, just resetting the room. Those of you listening on Clubhouse right now, we're here every Wednesday. Those of you on Facebook Live, every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time for this Disrupt Your Week show. And those of you watching on Facebook can see me right now. We're going to sign off here as the presentation part of the show finishes in the next 10, 15 minutes. We'll stay on Clubhouse for Q&A. So if you're listening on Clubhouse, excited to interact with you and coach with you here shortly. Okay. So, and we get the opportunity to be able to drive through this. And I just noticed it says launch your week with Dave Blanchard. Nice. We got it. Sweet. Awesome. Hey, I'll pose as my dad. That's stellar. He's awesome. Okay, cool. So, all right, getting back on track. We're talking about disrupting your week in terms of preventing burnout. And the fact of the matter is, burnout does not come, those of you just joining us, burnout does not come from what you do. It comes from what you think about what you do. Let me give you an example. Most of you on this show, okay, most of you listening in Clubhouse and on Facebook are very entrepreneurial. Those just tend to be the exact people that we attract to Habit Finder. Whether you work for someone or not, what I mean is the entrepreneurial mindset. You think outside the box. In fact, you think obsessively with a mind that never seems to shut up, which is a tremendous gift, by the way. I don't mean that in a bad way, that you can see possibilities vividly and you want to harness them and you want to use them. But your brain is on steroids in this incredible way in an entrepreneurial dimension in terms of visualization and ideas and thinking outside the box and resisting structure and a number of other things. And so here's what a lot of us face. Okay, we found over the last 20 years, studying the brains of over 250,000 entrepreneurs, that most people on average spend about 80% of their day thinking about what they need to get done, and about 20% of it actually doing it. Actually isolating and solo tasking the very actions that will move the needle forward. Not overthinking, okay? Not procrastinating, not distracting, and all the other things that come with that, but actually moving the needle forward only about 20% of the day. Now, rest easy. You don't need to flip that script. You don't need to spend 80% of your day actually doing it. Okay, some of the most effective powerhouse people you can think of, the ones that I know personally have gotten a peek behind the curtain of their lives that just kill it, probably do it about 50-50. Maybe 60% doing it, 40% thinking about it. That's pretty elite. But if you can get to 50-50, that is powerful, because you never want to shut the brain down completely. It's such a fantastic guide and creative source for inspiration and for rehearsal and exploration, problem solving and goal setting. We never want to shut that down and have to try and fire that back up. We just want to make sure that it's in concert with our actions, because here's what too many people are facing. They get up in the morning and they think about everything they've got to get done today. If you're lucky, a lot of us are thinking about everything we've got to get done this week. Even if we're not conscious of it, we're playing this reel over and over again in our conscious mind of all the things we haven't got done, all the things we still need to get done. And so now you've impacted your physiology and depleted it, because your brain is so powerful that when it visualizes everything you need to get done, it feels like it actually did it. And have you ever done a visualization exercise before where they like have you close your eyes and imagine something's in your hand? Like a really common one was like a big lemon, and you see yourself cutting it in half, and then you take a big bite out of it. And if the person's a skilled visual, person that walking you through this, when you bite into the lemon, your physiology will react. Your glands will salivate in such a way as if you just bit into something sour. In fact, sometimes your jaw will tense depending on how much you surrender to the visualization. So the brain's impact on the body is significant. And it's one of the primary causes of burnout. Get up in the morning, think about everything you need to get done, and then go do the first thing, hopefully. Or maybe procrastinate and get diverted and distracted and doing something else. Then you realize you did that, and you come back and think about everything that still needs to get done. And now you do the second thing. And then you come back and think about everything that still needs to get done, and you do the third thing. Now you've only done 3 things, but physiologically, you've actually done 3 things and everything you feel like you need to do 3 times. So let's say, just for arbitrary numbers, you've got 30 things you need to get done today, and you're stressed about that. You think about all 30 things. Then we go do the first one. Then we think about all 30 things again. Then we do the next one. Then we think about all 30 things again. It just compounds and gets harder and harder and harder. That's what leads to burnout. Not what we actually do or what we need to get done. It's how we're thinking about what we need to do. So let's talk a little bit about how to prevent this, okay? Because rest is necessary. Rest is important. I'm not here speaking against rest. I'm just here letting you know that if your number one tool for preventing burnout is rest, all you're doing is delaying burnout a little bit, not actually preventing it. For those of you just jumping in, we're talking about a car. If you're not taking care of the engine properly when it's running, the right fuel, the right belts, the right changing the oil, all those different things, the way you drive it, it doesn't matter if you shut it off at night. It doesn't matter if you shut it off for the weekend or for a few days. All you're doing is just prolonging the next time you start it up and get closer and closer to that engine blowing, to that burnout. Now, rest is super important, Okay. You should rest the engine of your car just like you should rest yourself. Just don't be surprised if that doesn't prevent burnout. It just delays it a little bit. It is necessary to gather your thoughts, to recover physically, but there are far more important things for you to add to the specific focus of preventing burnout. One of the number one tools for preventing burnout is to find more peace in your life, which can sometimes people can mislead them back to rest. But here's an incredible thing for you to remember. Peace is not passive. Relief is passive. And relief is often used as counterfeit peace. If I've been punching you in the stomach all day, and then I start flicking you in the ear, that is relief. But that is not peace. Okay? Or if I've just been doing it all day and I stop, that's relief, but that's not peace. And too many of us are living a life crazy all over the place, trying to take things on, okay, that aren't serving us, and being able to, in terms of, sorry, the train just derailed. I was looking at some of the comments in terms of some technical challenges. Apologies for that. But we're taking so many things on, and we're adding that weight to what we're thinking about and the expectations we start to create. So we're just looking for anything that can provide relief. Here's the challenge with that, though, and we're going to come to this in the list of the keys to preventing burnout in just a second. And that is that when we seek relief, we're seeking to avoid struggle. We're seeking to get away from the very things that allow us to grow and to become better. So rather than get away from the things that we can do to become better, let's get away from how we're thinking about the things that we need to do or have to do or should do that we'll talk about, because peace is not passive. The other thing we want to diffuse before we can embrace these 4 keys to preventing burnout is understand your expectations. You could spend the rest of your life just becoming more attuned and more aware to your own expectations, which when you break down the etymology of expectation is literally a concrete condition for happiness. A concrete condition for happiness. We don't want to seek expectations. We want to seek inevitability. We don't want to seek control. We want to seek influence. These are all things that foster peace, not passive relief, but assertive peace. Peace comes from accomplishment. Peace comes from consistency. And those things are difficult to attain if we're just thinking that all I had to do was shut it off for a day and I'm good to go. That's why rest doesn't prevent burnout. So let's talk about the 4 keys to preventing burnout. Number 1, don't be linear. Be directional. Don't be linear, be directional. Too many people try to plan their life out like a robot, like a linear sequence of, okay, do this every day. This and you have a list. I'm going to talk to 10 people. I'm going to post on social media this many times. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And they have this holistic checklist of all I have to do is carbon copy that every day and I'll be successful. That's really well intended. And I love having an opportunity to see where your benchmarks are. But make sure anytime you plan those out, it's in aggregate. Meaning, I wouldn't approach it as make sure that I do this every day as much as this is the activity that needs to happen in a week, for example. And ideally, that would be divided by 5 if you're working 5 days a week. So let's say you wanted to make sure you reached out to 50 people. So that's 10 people a day for 5 days that week. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be 10 on Monday, 10 on Tuesday, 10 on Wednesday, 10 on Thursday. What it means is you're going to get up on Monday morning and say, okay, I know that if I can reach out to 50 people by the end of this week, I can be more successful. I can grow. How many do I have the capacity to reach out to today? Meaning if I wasn't focused, if I wasn't really intentional, how many would I probably have reached out to, just kind of getting through the day, and do a few more than that? So let's say Mondays are great days for you. You're fired up. It's the start of the week. Awesome. I really feel like, just on any day, I would have gotten 10 done. So let's do 12 or even 15. And then as the day goes through, you're going to feel that. Then Tuesday, you might wake up and, wow, it was kind of a rough night, or there's something emotionally or hormonally or physiologically going on with me, having a tough time being able to to sustain that. But if you're on a linear scale, well, now Tuesday has to be something. And as soon as you have to do something, you start making it heavier, which starts leading to burnout. So that's why we want to wake up every morning and be directional, not linear. What is a win today? What can I do today? And then be a little bit better than that. Because as soon as it turns into, I did 15 yesterday, so I got to do 15 today, then we're going to miss the opportunity to make sure we harness the want to, the get to, and the choose to that comes with the peace that prevents burnout rather than the relief that can really create some major problems in just turning off the engine. So be directional. What direction are you headed, and how many steps can you take today? Some days you may take 10, 15, 20 steps. Other days, 2 or 3 steps may be a win. And you will want each day to feel as just as much of a victory as it would have been otherwise. Okay, you look at professional basketball or professional football. It's not about scoring the same amount of points in every game, because you have a different opponent in every game who has different skill sets and different abilities. Think of your day in the same way. You're going to run into a day that's got, the 1980s Chicago Bears defensive front, okay? And it's going to be really tough for you to get yards that day. But if at the end of the day, you got more points than your opponent, you win. And your opponent is your unhealthy habits of thinking, the challenges, the obstacles, the excuses, whatever you ended up facing that day that you didn't look to just overpower, because then you would be overpowering yourself, which leads to more burnout. We're going to be observant. We're going to be aware of it and be a little bit better than we would have been otherwise, because we know the direction we're headed consistently, not creating some linear sequence of what has to get done every day within reason. There should be infrastructure. I'm not giving you a backdoor to run out and say, I don't have to have goals for what I accomplish on any given day. All I'm saying is most people overdo it. They set this standard, and as soon as they miss it, they go into the next day with emotional debt. I didn't do enough activity that day, so the next day, whether you realize it or not, your brain's going, okay, now we have to do the activity that we were going to do today and make up for the activity we didn't do the day before. That's what you want to prevent with being directional and not linear, okay? Number 2, you will want to learn to embrace your mediocre. This is one of the most important elements and philosophies for preventing burnout. What is your mediocre? Well, if I was to ask the audience and say, what do you think when I say the term mediocre, which I've done from stages all over the world, and people say negative things, average, loser, lame, whatever it might be. Sometimes people just make noises. Ugh. Okay? Your mediocre is actually not the enemy. Your mediocre is actually quite beautiful. I love words. I love breaking them down. Those of you who have been on Disrupt Your Week with us for the last 5+ years, we've been doing a show like this. We want to understand that your mediocre comes down to median, which is halfway, medius, okay, and ochre, which is a jagged mountain. Your mediocre is halfway up the jagged mountain. What's the jagged mountain? It's your journey. It's the challenges that are built to grow you and to challenge you in the ways so that you can become, as my dear friend Danelle Delgado says, become the person that your results require. Become the person that your results require. That's what your mediocre is built for. That's what your jagged mountain does. But too many of us are trying to chase to the top of the mountain. And what do? We get all excited. We get all pumped up. It's Monday. It's the start of a new month. It's whatever your magic fairy dust is. And you take off up the mountain, running at an incredible pace with all this tremendous effort. And then you eventually and inevitably might get a little closer to what you think is the top. And then we always get pounded with a landslide of unmet expectations. And what happens? Not only do we get violently shot back down and pushed back down the mountain, but we usually end up further back than we started. And now we're back in that emotional debt place. And that emotional debt is one of the top causes of burnout. Carrying emotional debt from the day before into the next day. That comes from being linear rather than being directional. It comes from fighting and even avoiding your mediocre. Now, let me clarify. If your mediocre was static, meaning it stayed the same, because your mediocre in business terms would be called the status quo, okay? It is your most consistent level of performance. Can you perform above it? Of course. Can you perform below it? Yeah. Okay. And what we're trying to do is avoid these violent ups and downs of going way beyond our capacity and having that bungee cord sling us back down to earth. Okay. And then climbing into this hole of burnout and challenges, only to then try to figure out how to climb back out just to get back to where we were before. Okay. Starting back at square one, as people would say. However, your mediocre is dynamic. It's changing constantly. Your jagged mountain, the one that is specifically built to prepare you to become the person that your results require, okay, to become your best self, your jagged mountain is constantly adapting, constantly changing. And so halfway up that mountain is changing all the time, okay? If you were just looking straight ahead, let's say here's your mediocre today, okay? This is my most consistent level of performance. Well, the goal is that next year, this is your new mediocre. And then the next year, this is your new mediocre with these incremental improvements in between. And it is it is impossible to grow your mediocre. At least you're making it way harder on yourself than it needs to be if you're trying to avoid it. If you hate your mediocre, I've got to be the best. I've got to be perfect. I've got to be everything. Okay? I just posted on Facebook earlier this week that Tom Brady got a C- in Super Bowl class. He only won 7 out of 10. So the next time you start picking on yourself for not being good enough, for not being perfect, remember a C- is the greatest of all time. I think it's a beautiful way to live your life. You can do, you think about professional baseball players who only get on base 3 out of 10 times. 4 out of 10 times is astronomically amazing. So let's really start to put things into context by embracing our mediocre, embracing our halfway up the mountain, and then being just a little bit better than that. And then guess what happens? Your mediocre rises. And then get a little bit better than that with new habits, new abilities, and your mediocre rises. This is why we talk about constantly at Habit Finder that what we teach is how to create ever-increasing levels of ability. That ability continues to rise. To handle ever-increasing levels of stress, the jagged mountain that is shaping you and preparing you, with ever-increasing levels of ease. Your mediocre rises to your new level. But if you try to outrun it, gravitational forces, bungee cords, whatever you want to call them, yank you back. And you spend more time resisting your thermostat, your upper limit, whatever you want to call it, depending on the books you've read. You spend more time resisting that than actually becoming better. You have to fight for your success at that point because you're fighting this pull that you created from trying to avoid and run away from your mediocre rather than embracing it and owning it. And then if you embrace it, you can stand proudly on top of it with 2 solid feet, solid ground, your mediocre halfway up the jagged mountain, and figure out what the next step is for you to step up to. That's a key to preventing burnout, because fighting your mediocre, wishing you were someplace else, doing something else, and being someone else is also one of the top causes of burnout and draws into those expectations and that desire for relief and everything else. Okay, 2 more. We're going to get through these here in the next couple of minutes. Then we're going to sign off of Facebook Live and take some interaction and questions in our clubhouse room. Okay? So the third key to preventing burnout is to commit to struggle well. I had the opportunity to shadow who I consider a couple that is probably one of the most successful in direct sales that I've ever met in my entire life. Spent a lot of time with them last year, and I wanted to really take advantage of that time in terms of just paying close attention to little hints and keys and cues about why they are as successful as they are. I mean, we're talking about making over $500,000 a month in what they do. And they do a lot for other people, and they do a lot more than just what generates that revenue. And I've had the opportunity to have a front row seat to a lot of the peak of that growth over the last several years. But I was curious about what they do that other people aren't paying as close attention to. When I was working at the Jack Welch Management Institute, Jack would, before he passed, would do this live call with the students every semester. And they'd ask questions about strategy and Six Sigma and all this stuff. But he'd always bring it back to caring about people. What's in it for them? And it always seemed to just fall flat. People wouldn't really figure it out and notice it. They wanted the tip, the trick, the strategy, and not the person. And so as I was watching this people, I was curious, what people were looking at, what they were saying and what strategies they had, what they did on social media, who they attracted into their business. And at the core, what I realized after spending a lot of time with them was that one of their key gifts is they were committed to struggling well. One of the number one causes of burnout, if not the number one cause of burnout, comes from believing that there's something out there that will exonerate you from struggle. Because then what do? We struggle, we fight, we work, hoping that finally it's going to be over. Finally we'll arrive. And then we realize that all we did was step up our mediocre, okay, and reshape our jagged mountain to be able to continue to be prepared and shaped and improved to be able to serve others and to be able to grow and be more successful. And the part of our brain that was hoping it was over then creates major challenges, major weight, and that creates burnout. I remember the first time I ran the Heiner Trail Challenge, which is like 18 miles, 5,400 feet in elevation changes. It's right through the Poconos of Pennsylvania. And it was a wild race. Like, you're running up mountains that you've got to look for yellow things tied around trees so you know you're on the right path, and you're like on all fours because it's so steep. And I remember going up that hill. I can't remember right now what it's called for the life of me, but we'll just call it Hell Hill, okay? Because what would happen is you'd see kind of this crest, and you get in your mind, that's the top. I just need to get there. And we do this as entrepreneurs. We do this as leaders. Oh, I just need to get there. And so what do? We're able to fight even harder and push our struggle even more. Why? Because it's going to end. We're going to get relief. And on this hill, it was brutal the first time I ever ran. I knew what to expect the next time, because you get to the first crest and it wasn't the top. It would just flatten for just a minute and then go up the next one. And then you'd believe the next one, and it wasn't. Then the third one, and it still wasn't. And then you got over the third one and you could see the fort, the old fort that was up there. So you knew you were getting close to the top. Man, what a slap in the face experience. Because if I had not been focused on getting to the top and the relief it would bring, I would have been able to enjoy that climb and probably been able to summon a lot more energy for the entire thing. Because every time I got to a crest and it wasn't it was so much harder to get to the next one. So much harder. And we do that in our lives. We believe that if I can just get this system in place, get these leaders under me in my business, or do this or do that, that then I'll have less struggle. And then we get to the crest and it wasn't the top. Why? Because in life there is no top. We're always being calibrated by our mediocre. The jagged mountain goes on forever, because as soon as we get a little higher, that becomes our new mediocre, and the jagged mountain of our life grows. The more things there are to learn about ourselves, the more there is to experience. There is no finish line here until you're in the dirt. That's when you can have your relief. But if you want to prevent burnout, you're going to want to challenge this very inherent core human condition of believing that we're going to get someplace where struggle will go away, which is then where we get wired for relief rather than assertive and consistent peace that comes from accomplishment and consistency and vision and passion and service. But if we're chasing relief, if we're hoping that crest is the top and we'll finally be able to, I've arrived, that creates more burnout than anything else. Last thing, and then we're going to hop off onto Clubhouse for questions and interaction with anybody that's on there. And thank you, all of you that are also on Facebook watching and tagging people that you think could be served by this, sharing this out. Super appreciate that. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your opportunity to add value to other people in your life that you think could benefit from this. The last key to preventing burnout is gratitude. Gratitude. Gratitude brings a higher power in your life. And I want to keep this brief, because I'm sure many of you have heard so many things about gratitude. But one of the biggest game changers for me when it comes to gratitude is this. Gratitude is not a list. Gratitude is not things. Gratitude is a flow of energy and we use a list, or we use things or people, or the things that we identify in our lives that we're grateful for, we use those as a transport to get our physiology, to get our connection to that higher power, whatever that is for you, whether it's the universe or nature or God, whatever it is. Don't just write things you're grateful for. Don't just think about things you're grateful for. Experience them. And you only need just enough, which for most people is 3 to 5 things. Sometimes depending on where you're at and what kind of dark soil you've been planted in, and the challenges that come from that, referencing scroll 8 from Og Mandino, maybe you need 10 of them. But I see a lot of people that get caught up in write 10 things that you're grateful for. It's not about how many things you write. It's not about how many things you identify. It's about using those to transport into a flow of energy that is so much more powerful than you. And you'll know you're doing it because gratitude is a weapon. Gratitude draws you out. It doesn't do this. Oh, I'm so grateful for this. I'm feeling more passive. I'm feeling more just zen about where I'm at, and I don't feel the need to make more or become more. That's not gratitude. Gratitude is an infinite source of flow and energy. Use the list, use the things, use the names, use whatever you identify with in terms of your gratitude in life, and challenge yourself to come up with new things every time, but you're simply using them as a transport to get into that flow. So when you're sitting there, I recommend writing a couple of things down, then closing your eyes and actually experiencing them, or even just sitting there with your eyes closed and think about things that you're grateful for. I'm grateful for my daughters. See right there. I can see them. I don't need anything else. I can feel it. You go right into that flow. And even if you only feel that for a moment, that is a supercharge to your soul, to your physiology, to your neurology, to be able to prevent that burnout, to be able to make sure you're running on really clean fuel and not getting a bunch of gunk in your engine because you wanted to save a buck at the gas station, figuratively speaking. Okay. That's how we want to prevent burnout. Yes, you should rest. But too often people are relying on rest to do something it doesn't. Rest doesn't prevent burnout. Rest prolongs it. Rest serves other physiological and even emotional and neurological purposes. But burnout isn't caused by a lack of rest. It's caused by how we're thinking about what we're doing. It's caused by expectations. It's caused by resistance and wanting to try to get there in our life rather than actually live here. I've also seen manifestation create a lot of burnout. There's a lot of people that believe in manifestation. I will take someone who believes in manifestation and someone who believes in being present, and I'll put my money on the person who focuses on being present all day, every day. To be able to say, I am going to get the world to show up to me versus I am going to show up in the world present and aware and available, that's a winning formula. That's a great way to prevent burnout by making sure you're intrinsically connected to what you're doing so that you don't leave room for your mind to wander and spin and over-evaluate everything else. Okay? Went a little long today, but thank you so much for being here on Facebook Live. We're here every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. I'm going to sign off of Facebook Live and interact with some amazing people in Clubhouse. If you're not in there, get in there. Find someone who's in there. It's only on iPhone for now, so sorry if you don't have that, although I would recommend you go get one. But aside from that, please feel free to jump into the Disrupt Your Week Clubhouse show right now. And please come back and join us every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Share this out. Tag friends. We're really here to not withhold anything that can add value and help you succeed in life. This is not a funnel. This is not a taste test. I'm giving you everything on the particular topics we bring to these sessions every week, as does my father, my mentor, my best friend, and my business partner, who does his Launch Your Week show right here on the Habit Finder Facebook page every Monday at 8 a.m. So I want to take advantage of the time we've got left in the hour to take some questions on Clubhouse and interact there. But everybody else, create a great day. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.